hope that you are okay. So I am joined today, or actually I'm joining Mr. John Machin. How are you, sir?
Very well. How are you, Vicky?
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. It is bright and early, 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning, which is very, very interesting. I have been up, walked the dog, done my cardio, done my core work, done some mobility, and now I am obviously on this little bit of a chit chat stroke podcast stroke answering question type thing with yourself. So in terms of what we are going to be doing today, obviously we're not going to be speaking for hours and hours and hours because people don't want to listen to us.
No.
For hours and hours and hours. But the whole reason as to why you asked me to come on and have this chit chat with you is for some of the members of your group. They wanted to discuss some topics of nutrition, dietary elements, getting rid of some of the myths and faux pas about what they have been told in the past, basically beating the bullshit as best as we can do. So why don't you obviously have a little bit of a chat, tell us why, or tell the people as to why you wanted to include me in this particular chit chat and all the rest of it. Basically, have a bit of a chat yourself.
Sure. So basically, I've been coaching now for in the region of 11 or 12 years. And there seems to be, no matter how long sort of like we're in the industry or how much knowledge is out there, a very much a recurring theme or question that people ask. And that is, what is the best diet for me to lose weight? Is there one best diet that can just, be something I can do, get my weight down and make myself the healthiest badass that I can be? That seems to be a question that a lot of people ask. And more so than that, what can I do that will get me the results the quickest? What's something I can do that will just quickly fix whatever situation someone's in? So I thought it'd be really interesting to get together with you, see how you address that kind of question, along with obviously how I have been addressing that situation, and what actually might be best for people long term. Without any spoilers, usually a quick fix is probably a temporary fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that
definitely.
Makes sense.
The problem is with quick fixes, right? Because I get these questions all the time, and it's like I'll be coaching somebody. Sorry, for people who don't know who I am, just a very brief overview. I mean, I know that there's been posts about me in the group previously, but if you don't know who I am Vicky Masita, aka the TinyTitan. I am a sports performance nutritionist, dietary coach, bodybuilding coach, powerlifter extraordinaire, blah blah blah, and all the rest of it. I haven't just got my qualifications off Groupon. I have actually gone through years and years and years of education, and not just in terms of university wise and masters and all the rest of it, but actually nitty gritty, teeth into the ground, actually coaching high level elite powerlifters, strongmen, and then of course the general population clientele. I am also a fully registered adult nurse with a specialty in orthopedic surgery and GI disorders. So again, this is all surrounding about nutrition, dietary elements, etc., etc. So I kind of know what I'm talking about. I'm not one of these people who would just kind of go, yeah, I'll just wing it, and I'll give you the quick fix. So now that that's all over and done with, the quick fix element. So the problem is with a quick fix is that it's going to be extreme. If you want to lose an extreme amount of weight, like say if you want to do, if you want to make weight for a competition, let's just take it from a high level elite athlete and then bring it down to general population. If you want to make weight as a high level elite athlete, whether it be strongman or powerlifting or whatever like that, and you've got 8 kilos to lose in 8 days, that's going to be extreme. It can be done. I have done it on 2 occasions. I hate doing it, and I will only ever do it in a situation where the athlete has a 24-hour weigh-in. Okay, so they basically weigh in, then they've got 24 hours before they have to go and compete. I still hate it because it's bloody dangerous. It's dangerous in its extreme, and it involves water manipulation and sodium manipulation and basically making the athlete feel like shit. And I don't like it. Now, if you have a general population client who says, I have 8 weeks to lose 8 kilos, that's still going to be fairly extreme. Because a general population clientele does not have, and forgive me if I'm wrong, you can obviously interject with this one, does not have the mentality of an athlete in order to adhere to something particularly extreme for an 8-week period without feeling like shit. And without kind of going, well, I've got a family and I have a 9-to-5 job and I don't have time to prep, and I don't want to eat the same boring meals day in, day out, and I don't have time to go out and do my cardio every day, etc., etc. Would you agree?
I do agree. It's rare. Occasionally, the only person I've ever met is the person I ended up marrying. So
Yeah.
that's and she did start with being interested in weights and cardio, that sort of stuff, but then eventually pursued bodybuilding, powerlifting, and that sort of stuff. So I think the tendency to really pursue those kind of goals was always there. If that makes sense. But for the average person, it's simply far too much of an investment to be worth how strict you need to be and what sacrifices you need to make. And I think that's the key thing. It's the sacrifices that someone needs to make, because it sounds really good, doesn't it? Losing 8 kilos in 8 days. Well, if you had to experience that, what that's actually like, no one would want to do that. It's an awful thing to put the body through.
It is. And the thing is that when you look at 8 kilos in 8 days, when somebody says to me, I want to be a certain weight, I always kind of say, why? What is significant about that particular number on the scales? Really? Because quite honestly, a scale number is very, very arbitrary. You know, it basically tells you your gravitational pull towards the center of the earth while standing still in one place. It really does not mean a lot in the grand scheme of things. It's a tool of measurement, not the only tool of measurement. And that's where people kind of get messed up. So when they say, I want to weigh this much, I'm like, well, I can make you do that in 8 days. But on the 9th day, the weight's just going to go back on. And that's exactly what happens. When you make weight for a competition, you lose 8 kilos in 8 days. On the 9th day, you're going to gain 4 or 5 kilos, you know, because it's all water manipulation. You cannot physically lose 8 kilos worth of body fat in 8 days. It's physiologically impossible. Okay, so that myth busted. In terms of losing weight from the initial period and moving on, if you have a lot of weight to lose and you have a big calorie drop, all of a sudden you're going to lose like 10 pounds in a week. Okay, it happens with my clients all the time. So I put them on a specific macronutrient split, possibly give them a diet plan, depending on obviously what it is. By the way, guys, if you are having a PT session with anybody who is worth their own 2 cents and they say, I will give you a diet plan, please run away, because PTs are not allowed to actually write prescribed diet plans. They can advise, but they cannot do diet plans. I am different because I'm qualified to do it. Boom.
You're really looking for a dietitian when it's the specifics of, you need to eat this at this time with these kind of quantities of food and all that sort of stuff. That then becomes a dietitian's role, if that makes sense. I think that's a common misconception, because I have a team of coaches, and one of the most common questions we have as personal trainers is, oh, can you just tell us exactly what to eat? If you tell me exactly what to eat, I will go and eat that thing and then lose weight.
And they don't anyway.
There's a series of, exactly, I'll come to that. There's a series of problems with that. And a lot of assumptions around, can that client actually do that? So say I was qualified to write a perfect plan for someone to follow, they still likely wouldn't follow it. So there's a lot of interesting research around this in the field of medicine, where people need to take medication, which is literally going to save their life. And on average, in the studies that we were looking at, about 50% of the time, people are forgetting to take sort of like medication, or in 50% of the population, they at some point are forgetting to take medication, which literally will save their lives. And it's usually because they're just not in the habit of doing so. So a good example would be for our female clients, how often have you forgotten to take contraceptive pills? You know, where the consequences of not doing so, you know, if you keep forgetting, can be, you know, relatively high, but people do. Yes, most people will not forget to brush their teeth in the morning, if that makes sense. So the way I come at things with coaching tends to be not, you must eat this specific food at this specific time and write out a plan where, you know, basically I've printed off a recipe book, but more look at behaviors that people can adopt, linked in with habits, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the habits that people have got to form. So they've got to get out of the quote unquote bad habits and into a different habit form in order to make it consistent. The other thing that I find really interesting about diet plans, I have no problem with diet plans at all, and actually set meal plans, because I think, and I'm talking about athletes here, not general population. I think for a general population clientele, you can start them on a meal plan to kind of get them going. Because if you all of a sudden say to this person who has never tracked macros, who doesn't know what a macro is, who doesn't know about calories, and then all of a sudden you're going, right, there's your macro-based plan, do that. They're going to be like, holy shit, what does this mean? I have no idea. So you can do them a meal plan, but with swaps, and teach them about macros and that kind of thing, and basically give them the structure. So that, I think that it does play in two realms. It does help. You know, I've got a few general population clients who started on macros and they were like, Vic, it's pissing me off. I need a meal plan. And then I've given them a meal plan and they're like, actually, this is amazing, because I'm not thinking about anything. And it happens really well, and it works really well for very, very busy people.
Yeah.
So like one of my clients, for example, is a managing director of a big electronics firm. So he is consistently on the go. He's up at 5 o'clock. He needs to go and manage like 400 people and all the rest of it. He doesn't have time to think about macros, but he's a general population client. So I literally give him his plan and we update it whenever it needs updating. But he just goes, right, this is what I need to do. That's what I need to prep. That's what I need to eat. That's the time that I need to eat it. And he just goes, he's very, very robotic. So for busy people who do not have time or want to waste their mental energy on thinking about what to eat, that's another thing about it. Sorry, we're not even getting to the questions at this point, but that's another thing about it. If you give somebody macros, the amount of time I have had somebody say to me, I'm really hungry. And they're like, you know, this is somebody who's probably my height, 5'1", on over 2,000 calories or something, fairly sedentary. And then, you know, they're saying that they're really hungry. I have a look at their diet and they're using 450 calories on protein bars and fudge. And it's like, mate, 450 calories, you can get a huge plate of chicken, potatoes, vegetables, maybe some salsa, maybe some cheese. You could even have some bloody chicken fajitas if you wanted to, and it will be much more satiating than a poxy piece of protein fudge, which is all bloody marketing, by the way, bloody protein fudge. If you go for a protein bagel as opposed to a ordinary bagel, you're just going to be consuming more calories, because all they've done is take a normal bagel and infused it with more protein. It's all a scam. So you're eating more calories at that point. Anyway, these are like my little rants. I'll move on from that side of things. But yeah, so when you have these macro breakdowns, people can kind of go, I want it to fit my macros, right? If it fits your macros, or a macro-based plan is not basically an excuse to eat like an arsehole. It's not about trying to fill your macros or your daily intake with as many cookies and ice cream as you possibly can because it fits your macros. You still have to have nutrient-dense calories in there and nutrient-dense foods in there. So things like your potatoes, your chicken, your rice, your pineapple, fruits, vegetables, you know, everything like that is going to have a huge, much more beneficial on your body and composition. So if people are worried about things like cellulite and different deposits of fat and that kind of thing, which we'll get onto in a moment, because we had a little bit of a chat about that off air, then eating shit is going to fuel your body with shit, which example is basically going to cover you with this watery film, and you are going to metabolize it differently. There is a very, very poignant study from a guy called Professor Mark Taubes, who's very, very big in terms of like the keto approach and things like that as well. But if you want to do it, if you want to have a look at it, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, John.
It's someone I've read into now.
Okay, so if you just basically Google the Twinkie diet or the Twinkie experiment. Yeah, the Twinkies, right? Twinkie is just like a little deep fried donut that's covered in or got like a layer of cream that goes on the inside of it. It's a big American snack. And Professor Mark Taubes basically wanted to argue the fact that no matter what you eat, as long as you stay within a caloric amount, you are going to lose weight, because calories in, calories out. The argument is not flawed. The argument is absolutely sound. If you eat less than what you burn, you are in a calorie deficit. If you can adhere to that calorie deficit, guess what? You are going to lose weight. So answering one of the questions that is in your Facebook group, what is the best way, the best diet? The one that puts you in a calorie deficit and the one that you can adhere to. That's it.
Really interesting, because I think a common sort of like thought is that these diets, there must be one best one because they're so different. But in actual fact, I think when you look at the reason diets work, and actually in my opinion, all diets work for the reason that you said, because there is a, energy balance equation there. You're having less energy in than out.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, on the Twinkie diet, yes, you may be having less energy in than out, but are you getting everything the body needs to actually function and thrive? Possibly not. But diets in general, I think, have more in common than they have differences.
Oh, for sure. And interestingly enough, I'll have to send you the link for it. But interestingly enough, that particular study, the Twinkie experiment with Mark Taubes, it's really interesting. And I do really like talking about it. I love all my science. I'm a bit of a geek. But that particular study, he took his blood markers, he took all of his health markers and everything as well beforehand. Now, he essentially lost weight. He lost body fat because he continued this experiment over a duration of time. So he continued to lose weight. Now, when you lose weight, your blood markers are going to improve. Your cholesterol markers are going to improve. Your blood pressure is going to improve. Your resting heart rate is going to improve. Why? Because you are carrying less body fat than you did initially. So if you lose weight and you lose body fat and you change your body composition, regardless of where you actually got those particular calories from, you have lost body fat. That body fat was negative. So his health markers improved. He lost weight. He lost body fat, so his body composition was improved. His mental cognition and neurological focus improved. And his blood pressure and all of his basic metabolic functions, liver function, thyroid, kidney, everything else like that, were all improved over the course because he lost weight. But that was all down to the fact that he adhered to a calorie deficit. And that's it. So answering the question that was on your, I'm just bringing it up actually here now. So what is the best diet what is the best diet in order to lose weight? The one that you can adhere to that puts you in a calorie deficit. That is as simple as that.
The key takeaway from that is that there's nothing actually magic about any one specific diet.
No.
It's an Atkins diet, a paleo diet, a vegan diet, whatever the diet is. The diets that work all have some kind of reduction in the amount of energy that you're intaking, if that makes sense. But the key also there is the one that you can stick to.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's eating in a calorie deficit for a prolonged amount of time. And that's basically it. It's not about, I mean, in terms of, let me ask you this question. Out of these four things, what are the most important things to focus on a daily basis in order to achieve fat loss? So for complete fat loss success, what are the things that you should actually focus on on a daily basis? Leptin and thyroid hormones, eating in a caloric deficit, the amount of cardio and exercise that you do, or basically how good somebody else looks on social media. What should you focus on?
Out of those ones,
yeah,
it's going to be the caloric deficit, isn't it?
Exactly. Because you can't physically focus on leptin and thyroid hormones. Can you really? Yes, your leptin and your thyroid could potentially be affected. But can you focus on them on a daily basis? No.
No. And I think that is a very common across any kind of person's mentality, that they will focus on an outcome. So whether it's changing sort of leptin sort of like hormone levels, whether it is losing weight on the scales, whether it's looking a certain way, all of these are outcomes. And saying, I want to be 10 pounds heavier, 10 pounds lighter, whatever it is an outcome. It doesn't give you any information about how you'll actually get there. Whereas, well, if I need to eat in a caloric deficit, that's something that you can look at. Well, how do I eat in a caloric deficit? Maybe I need to look at how much I'm eating at the moment and how much would be sensible to reduce that by, which might lead us to an interesting one. So people, and you can understand this, are impatient generally.
Yeah.
So if I say to somebody, the first thing I want you to do is make sure you're getting enough sleep, or I want you to slow down when you're eating, or something that is small, easy to do, but will have a big effect on actually their ability to train, their ability to sort of like feed themselves properly. That sounds very boring. and it takes a long time to instill all of these different habits. Whereas if
Also not that easy.
No, it's not easy. It's certainly not the easy way. But
I just want to pick you up on that one. I'm sorry if I'm going to sound like I'm tearing you apart. I'm not tearing you apart at all. I just basically want to, because it's a general overview in a general population, I think it's quite good to have this discussion. So if you say to your general population client, right, I want you to get some more sleep. How?
It has to be how you would do it. Exactly. So it might be asking questions. What do you do before you go to bed at night? Oh, well, I watch 3 series back to back of Netflix before I go to sleep. Okay. So that's something that we could do. Could we watch 2 series for the next week, and then maybe watch 1 series, and then maybe read a book instead, and give them a path to how they might actually be able to unwind more easily and sleep. So it's not always a case of, I guess, saying someone should get more sleep is very, very broad. You need to give somebody a way of, or a roadmap towards that thing. And it's the same with, if I said to someone, I need you to slow down because you're eating so quickly, your gut isn't getting a chance to send a signal to your brain that you're full and you're actually overeating. It might be put your knife and fork down between bites, have a sip of water as you're eating a meal, that sort of thing. Put your portions into small amounts, however you would do it. Well, these are behaviors that people can adopt that if they just literally did them for long enough, they could assimilate. I think the biggest problem with diets, and the reason why most people don't stick to them, is actually to adopt a diet. There's a lot of different behaviors that have to change. And there was an interesting study, I think it was in a book I read by Chip and Dan Heath, and it's all to do with behavior and how many habits you can actually adapt at one time. So if you give someone one habit to adapt, so it's eating more slowly, they're going to do all these various different tricks to slow down how they eat. They have a chance of between 50 and 80% of people can adopt that one habit if that's all they focus on. The moment they give people a second habit, in the study that they did, so it's a small population size, but everybody by I think it was sort of 3 to 4 months in, hadn't stuck with those two habits. Makes sense. So giving people lots and lots of different things to do, they may well be able to do in the short term. So if it's, you need to eat precisely this meal, you need to have this much water, do all these different things, they can probably do it for 6 weeks, which is what a typical sort of crash diet might look like. But after that, there's a very strong chance that they won't be able to continue after that because, you know, it's damned hard to do that.
For sure. Have you seen a lot of the things that are going on the TV recently? There's lots of diet programs and stuff like that. Have you seen How to Lose Weight Well?
Is that the BBC program?
Oh, I don't know whether it's on BBC or whatever. I don't really take part in the channels, but there's a dietitian and there's a doctor. These are actual medical professionals, right? And I watch these things, and my husband can't watch them with me because I'm like, for fuck's sake! It's my channel. I can swear on this. But yeah, I look at this and I'm just like, for fuck's sake, this guy is an absolute moron, you know, in this, that, and the other. And he goes, I'm going to turn this off in a minute if you keep on shouting to the TV. But it really annoys me because what they basically do, right, is they give people certain diets in order to stick to. Now, one of the biggest things that I really hate using is the word diet. The minute you look at diet and exercise, all of a sudden motivation drains from a general population human being. You know, they really do. Because if you actually change your mindset from diet and exercise to nutrition and training, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. But if you look at diets, then diet is ridiculous. So one of them was, let's go with the keto diet. No, in fact, let's go with the Mediterranean diet, right? So Mediterranean diet, it sounds nice. It's lots of meats, lots of fresh vegetables, it's lots of oils, you know, and that kind of thing. And it's good for heart health and blah, blah, blah. But there were rules to it. So this is the Mediterranean diet. You can do this, do that, do that. But you cannot eat over 1,500 calories a day. You have to go out for a bare minimum of 10,000 steps a day. You cannot drink alcohol apart from 1 day a week, which has to be red wine because it's Mediterranean. And then basically come back to me in 2 weeks and tell me what you do. Now, this is coming from somebody who was eating over 3,500 calories a day. Guess what happened? Exactly.
Balls
Guess
out.
what happened? They're in a calorie deficit. Another one was the potato diet. Oh my God, this one ground my gears, right? This was the potatoes. I even asked my children about this one. And I'm like, tell me what this is, and I'll explain it in a minute. But the potato diet, basically, you can eat as many potatoes as you want.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
As many as you want.
As many as you want. You can cook it in any way, as long as they are not chips. So you can't have chips, but you can have as many potatoes as you want, and you can add was it 3 tablespoons? It was like 3 teaspoons or 3 tablespoons of olive oil that you can pour over your potatoes after you've cooked them. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's a chip.
Very similar.
It is a chip. If you put oil on potato, that is a chip. Basically, you are submerging potatoes in oil in order to fry them. That is a chip. Now, the reason as to why that particular diet was very satiating is because potatoes have the most highest satiation index of any other food on the planet. So it's a great diet food because you can eat 300 grams and you're absolutely stuffed, right? And I'm not being funny. How bored are you going to be eating fucking potatoes every day? You don't want to eat them. So you're actually going to stop eating all of that. You're in a caloric deficit because you're bored of bloody eating potatoes and because you're full. So that's another one. So I invented my own diet, right? And it's called Lick a Kiwi. All you're going to do is before every single meal that you eat, you are going to lick the fur off the skin of a kiwi before every meal, right? And you can eat whatever you want, but you cannot go over 1,500 calories. You have got to weight train 4 times a week, and you have got to get a bare minimum of 12,000 steps in a day. Guess what? Is it the magic of rubbing a kiwi, or is it the magic of a caloric deficit?
That's it. And it's an interesting one. And when you lay it out like that, it should be very obvious that what these diets have in common is the caloric deficit, the fact that they're probably going to encourage you to focus more on the types of food that you're eating. Because it doesn't matter if I tell someone paleo, vegan, Mediterranean, Atkins, whatever it is, they're going to have to pay attention to what they eat because there's going to be some kind of change. And with that paying attention to what they eat, there's probably, or there should be, some enhanced quality to what they eat. So they're probably going to be picking more nutrient dense food than what they were eating previously. So your client was eating 3,000 calories a day of McDonald's and goes to a Mediterranean diet, all of a sudden they're getting vitamins and minerals that they probably weren't getting before.
Oh, so that was the thing that I was going to say to you about Professor Mark Taub. So there's a lot of people who kind of faux pas bodybuilders because they stick to a certain diet, chicken, rice, blah blah blah, and all the rest of it, and they're like, oh, you're not having nutrient dense, you're missing out on vital minerals, vitamins, blah blah blah, and all the rest of it. And actually, that's not true. If you do have the same food day in day out, you do still have a specific quality of minerals and vitamins and phytogens and things like that. There was no difference between somebody who actually had a huge variance of different foods as opposed to somebody who just ate their chicken, rice, broccoli, oats, blah blah blah, and all the rest of it, because we do still have a whole array. The only thing that people are realistically deficient in, and this is across probably the world, to be perfectly honest with you, is vitamin D, especially much so in terms of the UK because we live in a very dark country. However, I do have a very good friend of mine, Dr. Scott Stevenson, and he was actually vitamin D deficient, and he lives in Miami. And has a permanent tan. I know, this is what I said. I was like, how the hell are you vitamin D deficient? But yeah, he took exogenous vitamin D and it was all good. So if the one supplement that I can give to anybody in terms of advice is just get some vitamin D and K2. Do not take it at the morning time, because if you are going to be having caffeine, it interacts with it. So it doesn't make it work. Have it of a night time before you go to bed. But yeah, so that array of vitamins and nutrients and mineral density things and all the rest of it, it's not about getting them from, I mean, if you have 3,000 calories worth of a pizza and you've got chicken, peppers, sweet corn, onions on your pizza with barbecue sauce, you've still got a big array of fiber, nutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fats. It's not going to be that great because it's loaded full of sodium. And if you only get all of your 3,000 calories from pizza, then okay, is it that great? Is it not that great? If you're in a calorie deficit, you're still going to lose weight. But I'm not being funny, I'd be bored of pizza. I would be bored of pizza if I had to eat that every day. But again, we're just getting onto a bit of a rant. Shall we answer a couple of these questions?
Yeah, sure.
Right, so let's get on to okay, just because we're following on from the theme about it, get some ideas. This one's from Amy, top fan. Hi, Amy. I'm glad that you are a top fan of the Machen Exercise Studio. Plug. Right, so can you get some ideas for best pre and post workout meals or snacks? So what's the best before or after high intensity interval training? And is that different to a weight session? So John, you tell me your view.
Trains, if you still move, because oh no, you're back, your screen had just frozen.
Yeah.
Generally it's in the evening. So with clients that are training with us and it's say 7 o'clock at night, something like that, I want to make sure that they've not had something as a massive meal right before they start bouncing around and doing burpees and things like that, because they're going to be sick. They're going to be digesting that meal probably for a good couple of hours. So it needs to be something that's fairly light that they can have as a snack before. What I actually do, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is I tend to split my carbs to go around my training. So the way I train when I'm training quite heavy with weights and stuff, or relatively heavy for me, is say, for example, I've got 200 grams of carbs in a day. 50% of those carbs I'll have half before and half after. So 25% of my carbs is kind of before my training, and then at least 25% of my carbs is directly after the training. And that allows me to go into that session feeling like I've got sort of like blood glycogen to be able to do the exercise, and I'm replacing that afterwards. That's kind of how I do it, but it depends on what someone's eaten. If someone's not had any kind of sort of like food throughout the entire day before they're training, then they probably shouldn't be training, but that meal might need to be earlier and bigger. So it depends on what that person is doing the rest of the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in terms of like performance nutrition, you are eating to fuel your next session.
Yes.
Right. So if you predominantly put a crap ton of carbs in prior to your workout, like 60 to 90 minutes pre-workout, one, you're probably going to feel very full. But two, you're fueling the session and the recovery afterwards, not that one that you're just about to do, because metabolism doesn't work like that and digestion doesn't work like that. So when you are looking to, I mean, if we take it in the differences between high interval training, so like a lot of jumping around and cardio and that kind of thing, and move it over to like a weight session. Again, this completely differs in terms of how many or what type of weight training you are going to be doing. Powerlifters and strongmen who are just working on their strength phase, for example, or if you're just going to be looking at more along the lines of a lower rep scheme, you don't need a lot of glycogen in you because you're not going to be using the glycolytic system. You're going to be using the creatine phosphate system. So I have a number of strongmen on my books and they're eating like 5,500 calories and they feel like shit and they've got a big gut and all the rest of it. And I'm just like, right, you know what? We're just going to take things down. And they shit themselves because they're like, I can't go into a session on this lower amount of calories. They're still on over like 3,500 calories, for God's sake, but all of a sudden they feel better because their leverages are better. Their belly isn't in the way in terms of like moving a log, and they're only doing 5 reps. Now, 5 reps, you're not going to be depleted of glycogen. You're going to hit your central nervous system a hell of a lot more. And it's that short, sharp focus that they need in order to elicit a power, which is the creatine phosphate system. So there's a lot of powerlifters out there who literally don't eat a lot of carbs. They eat a lot of carbs because they want them, but not because it's actually going to fuel their performance. Now, for somebody who's a marathon runner, for example, they're going to need a lot of glycogen. They're going to need a lot of carbohydrates in comparison. And it's weird, right? Because they're really skinny people and realistically, they don't carry a lot of muscle because in order to run a marathon and be a long distance runner, they need to be light on their feet. So they need to be lighter in general, but they also need a lot of glycogen because they're going to be burning it as their predominant fuel source. They're also going to be all this myth about burning through your carbohydrates and then your fat starts taking over. That's bullshit. You burn things at an equal rate. Once you start to deplete that glycogen and you have no more glycogen left, which is very difficult to do, by the way, because you've got a shit ton. You've probably got about 400 grams worth of glycogen stored in your body because it's within your liver and it's within your muscle cells. So you can store a lot of glycogen throughout that point. Once you are completely full of glycogen, if you continue to eat more carbohydrate, you overspill and it starts to go into your adipose tissue. Your fat, I'm sorry, I'm going all geeky and thing. The fat that you take in exogenously cannot get stored in liver or muscle, apart from intramuscular triglycerides. So the only place that it's going to predominantly fall down on is your adipose tissues, which is fat. So realistically, in terms of aiding performance, you do not need a lot of fat in your diet in order to predominate that. Unless you have like zero carbohydrates, you're going to have all of your calories from protein and fat, and then you can start using fat for fuel. But again, that's a completely different conversation altogether, and it's a lot more convoluted in a way that you can actually do that. So basically, that's the thing about it. So if you're going to be doing a high intensity interval training session, if you're going to be doing a lot of jumping around, I would personally not recommend you have a high dense meal before you go and do that, especially if it is going to be at 7 o'clock at night, because you would have been eating throughout the day. Drip feed in a decent amount, which is in accordance to your goals, caloric amount. I mean, you know, I'd be naive to just kind of say, yeah, eat this much, because that would be stupid, because I don't know individuals at the end of the day. But if you're going to be doing high intensity interval training that's going to last, how long do your classes last?
If it was high intensity interval, it's going to be around about half an hour, and that's including the warm up. So it's short. It's really short. And the key, I think, is that person, anyone who's doing those sort of things, needs to have eaten throughout the day.
Yeah.
Because realistically, if they've eaten throughout the day, they're going to have plenty of sugar in their liver available for them to be able to do whatever they need to do.
Well,
it's if they have not eaten since breakfast. And then they need to go into this session. So things that I suggest would be maybe good, maybe an hour or so before. A banana. There's nothing wrong with having a banana that they can have that's not particularly heavy. It's going to have, 25 grams of carbs in there or something like that. It doesn't need to be that much more complicated than that. Unless you disagree. It needs to be more complicated than a banana.
Yeah. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, a banana is fine. It is fructose, so there isn't any kind of like glycogen in there or glucose from it. Obviously, it is uptaken in a different stream, but what I would suggest people do have is protein. Protein, if you have exogenous protein, you cannot store protein, right? And you cannot make your own. So there's a lot of, I mean, you can make your own energy from protein, but it's called gluconeogenesis, and there's a lot of pathways that you need to do. It's really fucking difficult to do it. So you might as well just eat some glucose.
It's body's last choice, isn't it?
Basically, yeah, exactly.
Got carbohydrates there, it's going to pick the carbohydrates first.
Exactly. So what I would suggest that you do is actually have something protein heavy. 25 grams of protein on average, between 25 to 30 grams of protein on average, in the form of a shake or something that's really easily uptaken, but has got a full array of amino acids. So again, not complicating things. Have a protein shake. Right, have a protein shake and a banana, or have a protein shake, a banana, and a couple of rice cakes, and then you'll be absolutely fine, depending on when your last meal was. That'll be fine. Reason why we use protein as a pre-workout in terms of either weight training or cardio training, in whatever aspect of it, is to reduce the aspect of muscle protein breakdown and to elevate muscle protein synthesis, because the last thing that you want to do when you are losing weight is look like a melted candle, which is basically where you atrophy all of your muscle tissue and actually keep on all of the fat. So that's not what you want to do at the end of the day. So have your protein. Bananas are great, because especially for interval training, because it stops cramps because of the potassium element in there. I would actually also include some salt into that meal, and the meal prior. People who are afraid of salt, don't be afraid of salt. Salt is really important. Again, that is another big sciencey thing that I'm not going to get on my tangent with, because we've already been talking for 40 minutes and people are probably getting bored. So yeah, salt, protein, small amount of carbohydrates if you're going to be doing high intensity interval, especially if it's only 30 minutes. You don't need a lot. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, boys and girls, but if you are only training in terms of a cardio fashion for half an hour, you are only going to be burning on average about 200 calories. That is less than half a sandwich. Yeah, I know it sucks, right? But it is what it is. So that's that one. In terms of weight training, again, it depends on your rep scheme. It depends on your goals. If you're going to be doing hypertrophy training, then you are going to need a little bit more carbohydrates than you are doing so if you are doing strength training and heavy 1 rep maxes.
Yeah.
Answer that question okay?
I think so, yeah. To go back to sort of like calories burn, I think it's important for people to know that when you're training, calories burn shouldn't always be the only goal, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, for example, if we're doing squats or lunges or press ups or anything like that, sure, we might burn 200-300 calories in a session, but it's what the body has to do after that session in order to recover, repair, build stronger, that sort of stuff, the mobility differences and that sort of thing. There always seems to be, with a lot of the public, we exercise as a means to an end just to burn off energy. Well, if that was the only benefit of exercise, just eat less and then you don't have to exercise. Exercise is a really, really shitty way of reducing your caloric intake, in my opinion, which might sound really weird coming from a personal trainer to say
No,
that
I don't think
exercise is a terrible way of losing weight.
I mean, if people exercise literally to burn calories, they're doing it the wrong way, or they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I personally do not exercise to burn calories. I exercise or I train. I hate the word exercise. I train to get stronger.
Yes.
And that's basically what I do. I train to get strong and remain healthy. And that is what I use strength training, bodybuilding, powerlifting, and cardio for. That's all I do. So if you change your idea in order to it's like cardio bunnies. I hate the term cardio bunnies as well, because you know cardio bunnies can also be really bloody good athletes. They can be sprinters and hurdlers and all the rest of it, and all they can do is bloody do cardio. Marathon runners, all they do is run, because it's just like, well, to be a good runner you need to run.
Yes.
So I don't really understand it. But yeah, so I hate the term cardio bunny because it's all in accordance to your goal. But if you want to train to become stronger, healthier, more aesthetic, look good naked, then you're going to need to actually change your mindset in terms of I am exercising to burn calories, because that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, in terms of post-workout, the best kind of foods to eat, again, protein. Negating the fact of muscle protein breakdown, elevating muscle protein synthesis. Again, it needs to come from a whole protein source. So things like chicken, fish, protein, as in like protein shakes, Greek yogurt if you are not lactose or dairy intolerant, egg whites, or even whole eggs. Whole eggs is very good, and milk. Whole milk is very good too. You want to be keeping the fats on the lower end, but again, if you are not going to be training until the following day, like 24 hours later or 48 hours later, don't get mixed up with don't get het up on the amount of fat that you are going to be taking post-workout. It's not going to slow down glycogen resynthesis that much. So, or replenishment, not resynthesis. It's not going to slow it down by that much. So again,
there is a caveat there, I think, and that's if, for example, someone has gone all day with very, very little food of any source, does their hard workout, I think the priority then is getting their carbohydrates and proteins in. And if you have loads and loads of fat with that will slow things down, it may not be as beneficial to have loads of fat with that meal if you've not eaten anything previous. Or you've had maybe lots of fat previous, but you've not had your protein intake. If you need to get that protein in quicker, it might be an idea to have more fast digesting proteins if they haven't eaten all day.
Proteins.
But realistically, we don't want people to be training when they haven't eaten all day.
Proteins.
So carbs and proteins, they tend to be slower to deliver with fats. Is that not right?
No. So you're talking about, you just said fast acting protein there. There's no such thing. I think you're getting mixed up with fast acting carbs.
I meant just more like a protein shake is already pretty much broken down, isn't it? Whereas if I had to chew a piece of steak and digest it, that surely must take longer to get to.
No, not at all. No. So basically protein, as in like a protein shake, has got a complete array of amino acids because it's a man-made substance, okay, with sweeteners and various other bits like that in it, okay? So it's very, very fast to deliver. In terms of studies for the biggest amount of muscle protein synthesis spikes. Okay, the main predominant spike of that is leucine. So you need to hit a certain leucine threshold with every bout of protein that you have. So things like you were just saying there, having a steak, having a whey protein shake, and having whole milk and whole eggs as well. Those have been the biggest things to create the biggest muscle protein synthesis spike out of any other thing, including protein isolate. So if you have a whole protein concentrate, which is actually higher in calories, higher in carbohydrate, and higher in fat in comparison to a protein isolate, you are going to get a better response from the blend as you would do from the isolate. Now, if you have to chew something and digest, you're still getting the same amount of protein in. And if you're talking about a steak, that has a higher amount of fat in it. So I wouldn't necessarily state that you should have a steak post-workout, but then there's nothing wrong with it. Regardless of whether you've had something throughout the day or not, you're still going to be replenishing your protein and your glycogen stores post-workout. But it's like we were saying previously, you are going to be feeding and providing your body with the energy for the next session with what you eat in the day. Yeah. So if you have eaten nothing all day and then you've worked out, fasted, and then you have a big meal of an evening time and then you go to bed, your stores are full.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you go to bed, and regardless of whether you have a shit ton of fat with that or not, you're still going to go to bed and go to sleep. So all of those nutrients are not going to go anywhere. You're not using them. You're sleeping. So the following day, for example, if you're going to drip feed in more carbohydrate and then work out the following day, your stores are still full. Now, having fat post-workout, sometimes I actually give a lot of, well, not a lot, but I've got a handful of clients who I have eat more fat post-workout. So, and the reason for that is because they were eating all of their carbohydrates, they were eating all of their protein, and then they were getting the shakes. And obviously we took like blood sugar readings and things like that. And when we put in more fat, it slowed that glycogen drip feed. So it stopped them having the shakes and stopped them burning through things very, very quickly. So again, it slows it down. This is person dependent. But the only way, or the only reason as to why you should not have more fats post-workout in a post-workout meal is if you're going to be working out in a secondary session the same day. At that point, then, you want to be refilling your glycogen really, really, really quickly. And you can have it from higher GI carbohydrates. However, the GI thing is just like complete bollocks as well. You know, people are saying like white rice is better than brown rice and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. If you combine white rice with chicken, the GI of that white rice completely changes anyway, because you're combining it with something. So, you know, that's by the by. Again, don't get complicated with this shit. You really do not need to be complicated with this shit, you know? So post-workout, eat protein, eat carbohydrates. If you want to have some fat with it, have some fat with it. You are not going to detriment your replenishment system. If you are a performance athlete that's going to be having 2 sessions a day, then yes, keep your fat on the lower end because it will slow glycogen uptake. Your protein, you're going to get protein in regardless of whether you chew it, drink it, or snort it. You know, it's going to go in there. Does that answer that question?
It does, and it's interesting as well to hear that side of it on the protein, because that's always something that I had thought that yes, the carbohydrates would slow down with the more fat that you would have, and I thought the protein did also. So to hear that actually the protein uptake is pretty much the same, irrespective of when you have it, is good news actually, because you know, it can only be good if you can get your protein at the same rate, irrespective of when you have that. Does that make sense?
You should still have it post-workout. Protein is really important to have in numerous pulses, especially for somebody who's looking to build lean muscle tissue. Because again, we want to be spiking that insulin level, spiking that leucine threshold throughout the day, multiple times a day. And that has been proven to be beneficial. In terms of weight loss and things like that, it don't matter how many times you eat a day. People who say you need to eat 5 times a day in order to stoke the metabolic fire and get your metabolism, that's bollocks. You know, you don't need to do that. You can have one big meal across the day, as long as it's within your caloric deficit. Look at that magic, right? As long as you eat within your caloric means, You can have one meal a day. It's not going to be great in terms of digestion, but in terms of actually losing body fat, then it's absolutely fine. That's the reason why intermittent fasting can work for some busy people, because they're on the go. They just eat one big meal and then they lose their weight. Okay. But in terms of actually building lean muscle tissue and actually having those leucine spikes throughout the day, then that is obviously why we eat a little bit more. Like I eat 6 times a day, for example, but I'm a bodybuilder. So I'm different in terms of like general population clientele. So again, don't get caught up with these kind of like myths, guys. You know, you don't need to eat 6 times a day. You're not an athlete, you're not a bodybuilder. You just want to look a bit better naked.
Yeah. The way I usually articulate that to clients is your body fat, obviously we can store body fat. Your blood sugar or glycogen, we can obviously store that in our liver, but the protein storage system isn't the same. So it's kind of like trying to keep the sink full with a plug out, right? So you've always got to be putting little bits in, because if I have all my protein in one meal at the start of the day, it's not necessarily going to be available for me if I'm training late on in the evening, if that makes sense. I will probably have excreted or weed out some of that. There's only so much that I can actually hold on to.
Yeah, not within like an 8-hour period. If you had all of your protein in one big swoop, I mean, for you, obviously, that's a really silly thing to do because you need those leucine spikes. Yep. But you won't get rid of it that quick. You know, you will hold on to it. As long as you've got free floating amino acids, which is what you would do if you did have a huge amount of protein first thing in the day. I mean, what's your protein like? 180, 190?
So you have it at 200 at the moment. So it's just, I guess what I'm saying is it's not as ideal to have 200 grams of protein for breakfast and then train at 7 o'clock at night, as it would be to probably have sort of like 4 doses of 50 grams of protein.
Correct.
There's more. That's much more of an ideal way to load it. So certainly with the protein, I like for people to have it throughout the day with each of their meals in fairly even amounts.
Correct. Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. Right. So there's another question from Amy saying, when you're doing an evening class around about 7 or 8 o'clock of an evening time, is it best to eat dinner before or after, or does it make a difference? I think we've just kind of answered that. Eat. Just eat. And one thing that I would actually give you in terms of advisory notices, stop calling meals breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because it really does great on me, because it's just like, okay, you eat your pre and post workout. Okay, well, when do I eat my dinner?
Yeah, that's it. Because you frame your meals around your training, and I think that's what we do as athletes. If we're calling me an athlete, we eat around our training. We make things work for those goals, because those are the goals that are important to us. But I guess for some people, that is the terminology that they use. What would I have for my first meal of the day or breakfast? So you've seen some of the pictures I've sent you, and sometimes my first meal of the day is like a chili con carne type thing with rice. And
yeah, I know.
That
still kind of gets me a little bit, but yeah.
My breakfast is just another occasion to eat. It's an opportunity to eat. So it's I don't have themes of meals per se.
No, exactly. I mean, I never actually, like I said, I eat 6 meals a day. So if I was to call meal 1 breakfast, what would I call meal 2? Because meal brunch. 2. Yeah, and it's like it's meal 2, and then I eat my lunch, because it always makes me laugh, because my husband does that and he's like, oh, no wonder I'm hungry, it's lunchtime. I'm like, oh, what's it? You're going with a body clock now or what? But lunchtime realistically is like, what, 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me? That's my post-workout. So, but I would have eaten twice before that. So I'll have my breakfast, or like my meal 1, for example. I'll have that at 6:45 in the morning, 6:30, 6:45. Then I'll have my pre-workout meal, which is my meal 2, and that's my big meal. I do like eating a big meal, but I eat that like 90 to 2 hours before I go and train. And then I'll have that at like 9:30. So realistically, a lot of people are still eating their quote unquote breakfast at 9:30.
Yeah.
And so I'll have that, then I'll train, I'll have my amino acids throughout my training, and then I'll have my dinner or my post workout at 1 o'clock. But then again, that's not like my lunch because I've already eaten 2 meals beforehand.
Sure.
You know, it's weird. So stop calling things breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just eat food. Just kind of say, right, I'm going to eat, you know? So same thing with like post workout meals and snacks and stuff like that. Okay. So just eat. Don't worry about it. Okay. So last one, because we're coming up to about an hour. So one from Joanne Lee.
Yes.
Topic of stubborn fat. This is an interesting one. So you're talking about subcutaneous fat that can be difficult to shift from stubborn areas like cellulite. So even if you are quite lean, you still have cellulite going there. So do you mind if I just break down a little bit from this one?
You go for it.
Everybody has fat cells, right? When you lose body fat and you lose weight, you do not lose fat cells. Okay, don't lose those. Those are lipids. What happens is that your fat cells, if you gain weight or gain fat, they expand because they're fat. If you lose body fat, they reduce in size. And when they reduce in size, they tend to lose the adipose tissue that goes from this lipid cell, right? So it comes down in a small amount, which is the reason why people get really frustrated with the scales, because they're like, oh, it's not moving. And they start to feel a little bit more squishy, and their tummy starts to feel a little bit more granulated, and they start to see these little kind of like, you know, cellulite pockets kind of turn up. But it's because the fat is slowly starting to drain away from that adipose tissue. And then all of a sudden, maybe 10 days later, 7 to 10 days later, they have this huge weight loss on the scale. There's like a kilo to a kilo and a half. And that's what's known as the whoosh effect. This was predominated and called the whoosh effect by my very good friend, Lyle McDonald. I love Lyle to death. If you do not know Lyle, there's a few podcasts that I've done on my channel with Lyle, and he's incredible. Lovely, lovely man. And the whoosh effect is where all of the adipose and the fat has drained from the cell. Within that time period, the cell needs to keep its structure. So water fills that place where the fat is coming down. Once the fat is completely drained, the water is not strong enough to maintain the structural integrity of that cell, so the cell collapses. All of the water gets dispersed, whoosh, right? So that's obviously what happens. Now, when you're in that in-between stage and you have lost surface area of fat as well, this is where you tend to see the cellulite, and it's where the fat cells are pressed up against the skin, and that's where you can see it. Women will have more cellulite around their bum and their thighs, sometimes their quads as well, and around about their lower back. And that is unfortunately just the way that women are made. If we look right the way back to caveman days, you will see that women have been carrying babies. They have been squatting to gather all of the berries and things like that. They need bigger amounts that are there. And in order to have that estrogenic patterning, that's what's going to help you carry a baby. So the fact that women are saying, like, I mean, back in the day, I mean, I'm talking like in the 80s and stuff, it was really fashionable to have a really skinny butt and like that thigh gap, things like that now, right? Now that isn't the case. Now women want big butts. They want big butts, they want big thighs because ace, but they don't want cellulite. The only way that you are going to build lean muscle tissue without all of the cellulite is by working them. Squat, lunge, do all of those things that you need to do in order to build it. You cannot spot reduce. I am very sorry, ladies, you cannot spot reduce. And I'm sorry, guys, as well, you know, because guys will predominantly put their body fat down into their bellies and lower backs, right? That's a big thing for guys. But you cannot spot reduce. Waist trainers, they will not get it rid of you for. Magic cellulite creams, it will not get rid of it. You just need, if you want to lose body fat, you need to lose body fat all over. And women will be very lean up top as opposed to not very lean at the bottom. In order to lose that body fat in their lower half, you just need to carry on in that calorie deficit. And you will be lean and your body fat will be low. But when you start to regain some weight in a better fashion, don't just go into a caloric
dropping out there for me there, Vicky. Yep, you're back.
I'm back. So don't just lose a load of weight. Get to that point where you're, you know, because this is, again, the stubborn body fat areas, they're stubborn for a reason. And you just need to carry on chipping away into that body fat, into that deficit, in order to lose it. So it, like, say for example, with my bodybuilding prep, for example, right, my lowest body fat reading was 7%. I was lean. And but I mean, don't get me wrong, it hurt to sit down. My ass hurt to sit down, but I needed shredded glutes at that point. A woman who wants to just get rid of some cellulite doesn't need to have shredded glutes. But I was ridiculously lean up top, and I remained lean up top, and was, in comparison, my body fat on my lower half was still quite high. So that's the reason why I had to keep on chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. But that is the reason why it's called stubborn body fat loss. Now, if you're going to be into a bodybuilding prep, there are some certain supplements, but I'm not going to name on here, that you can use in order to help with that stubborn fat loss, which just increases internal thermogenesis and body temperature and things like that. But that is really for the very stubborn areas when you have realistically got to that end point, and you want to use those supplementations. They are natural as well. But that's the reason why I'm not going to talk about it on here, because people are going to think, oh, that's a magic pill. It's not a magic pill. You can only use it at certain points. So for people like yourself, Joanne, if you are talking about getting leaner down on your bottom half, just keep on going. It's got fuck all to do with hormones. It really, really does. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it has got fuck all to do with hormones. Hormonal patterning in terms of females, you will carry it more so on your lower half. Men around the middle, lower back. It's got nothing to do with your hormones. You just have to carry on going.
So would you say there's going to be a trade-off? I would say for Jo, if she was to just continue to lower her body fat, and drawing to your own experience, where to get your lower half as low in the body fat as it needed to be, the upper half had to keep coming down also. I think
there is only a certain amount of time where that upper body will continue to lose. And basically, because of a female hormonal patterning, and I mean, I know that I'm saying that it's got fuck all to do with hormones, but it does have fuck all to do with hormones. You're not going to mess up your hormones by doing it. In order to get rid of that, your body as a female wants to keep the fat on the lower half, because that is what keeps a female healthy. That's what keeps them there. You can get to a certain point where your body will just kind of say, right, okay, now I know that there is not plentiful amounts of food around me, so I need to start shutting down some kind of systems in order to survive. Because, I mean, let's face it, you are literally, if you're thinking about lowering your body fat or into a bodybuilding competition or whatever like that, you are literally starving yourself very, very slowly. That's all you're doing. In order to be in a calorie deficit, you're starving yourself very slowly. When you get to that point where your body thinks, okay, now I'm starving, I need to start shutting down some things, the first thing that's going to go for a woman is your reproductive system. Because bottom line is, you do not want to bring more mouths into this particular world when there isn't plentiful amounts of food around. So that's when you start to see all these decreases. You start to mess up your periods and various other things, and your periods stop. When it comes to that point, there are ways, obviously, of getting your lower half down without your period stopping. But again, this is all person dependent. You know, I've had people go through a complete bodybuilding prep and they've kept their periods all the way through. So again, this is about manipulating things and reactive coaching. I do have a lot of clients, or I have, well, one or two realistically, who are saying, well, what's the plan for the next 4 weeks? I'm like, I don't know. It depends on why your bloody body reacts. This is the reason why we have check-ins every week, you know, because I might make one change, and that one change is enough to elicit the biggest change that I want over the 4 weeks without it having any other detrimental effect. But if I say, right, we're going to do this week, and then in 4 weeks' time, I'm going to do that, I'd be fucking stupid, you know, because it'd just be silly to do that, because I have no idea what's going to happen on day 21 of that particular 4-week period. Yeah. So this is all about reacting to the situation and reacting to the responses that your body gives, because everybody responds differently. There can be sometimes, in some instances, where people just reduce their caloric intake by 350 calories. And by doing that for a consecutive 8 weeks, for example, all of a sudden, bang, you know, their periods dry up, and yet they're still quite high in body fat. So, you know, it's not about body fat. It's not about particular nutrients that you are taking in. It's not about particular macro splits that you're going to be taking in. It is just a question of getting leaner. And it's like for men, for example, if they want to get shredded glutes in, they have to continue on going on that path of a calorie deficit. They can detriment their muscle tissue up top, and they can sacrifice that but sooner or later, it's going to come off, because as in like your body fat on the lower half, it's going to come off because your body is going to need to use that in order to efficiently fuel the sessions that you're going to do. So it's just about carrying on losing it. And once you get to that certain point, you can then reverse out of it. Again, it's the reverse that's really important to allow. And women, again, you'll lay it down on that lower half because that's where you're going to be needing it, you know, but you can't be an arsehole in a reverse. If you are an arsehole in a reverse and just basically eat all of the food, all of the pizza, all of the Twinkies, and go straight up, you know, from like 1,500 calories straight up to like 3,500, 4,000, then you're going to get real fat real quick. You've got to be clever with it. So I finished a cut, got a while ago now, like 6 weeks, 7 weeks ago, something like that. I was in a cut for 6 weeks and I lost 5 kilos. It was not heavy. It wasn't drastic. It wasn't anything like that. I basically implemented a calorie deficit, implemented some cardio, and just carried on training. I lost 5 kilos in 6 weeks. Brilliant. Happy, all to go with. I am still doing cardio now, because if I had just cut out all of my cardio and just increased all of my food, I would have been fat. But I am heavier now than I was at the start of my cut last year, and I look better.
Yeah.
So this is all about the differences of what you need to do. So I hope, Joe, that helps. I know it's not as simple as just kind of saying, yeah, unfortunately, it's hormones. It's not. You just got to kind of dig deeper. That's all.
Yeah. And I think there may also be a point where you kind of have to accept that if you continue to drop that body fat down, is that truly what you want? If we're going to be that much leaner on the upper half, if we are going to be having that few amount of food, if we're not being able to go out, we're not being able to sort of like socialize and all these different sorts of things. So it's important to ask, is what you're going to have to do to get that body fat down going to be truly what you want? Because
is it worth it?
Is it worth it? Because to give you an idea, Joe's body fat percentage is around 15-16%.
That's lean.
It's lean. Her upper body is, if you were to just look at her upper body scores, she's going to be under 10. But a lower body is more representative of someone who's about 18. So that gives her that kind of average, but she only stores it on the lower half, if that makes sense. To get that lower half down, if she's going to have to continue to reduce her upper body, that's how Joe actually came to us, almost emaciated on the top half, with, you know, sort of like not that, well, she had more body fat on the lower half than she has now. She's actually in a better position now than she was before, because she's put a little bit of upper body fat on, lost some lower body fat, and she looks, in my opinion, fantastic. But she still can see some body fat on her legs, and it doesn't, in her head, match. The upper body is a little bit leaner than the lower body, and they don't match. I think
the problem is with this as well is that it can be a lot of self-perception.
And that's what I think too.
So women can have a bad hair day because their hair doesn't go in their ponytail correctly, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm a bloody whale and I feel fat and I've got all this cellulite because they're having a bad hair day. Do you know what I mean? And women are weird creatures, very, very strange creatures. And I can totally appreciate that one. But yeah, and we are nitpickers as well. So the fact that somebody says, yeah, well, I'm fatter on my lower half. Well, are you fatter on your lower half, or are you just literally scrutinizing the fact that your legs are staring at you in the mirror and you're squishing bits and you're pulling at bits and all the rest of it? I've still got visible abs, but if I sit down and I try and pinch something, I can pinch some flab in between my fingers, right? But I have visible abs. So I know that I'm lean and I know that I'm not going to do it. However, I hate my abs. So if I sit there or stand there in the mirror and just keep on looking at my ass, and I'm just like, oh, my ass is so fat, my ass is so fat, all of a sudden I've put that seed into my brain and I just keep on focusing on that. I'm not going to focus on the fact that I've got shoulder striations or a big chest or veins in my biceps and things like that because I look fucking sick. I don't look fucking sick, by the way. I'm not boasting my own trumpet. I'm just saying. But I'm always going to be focusing on the fact that my ass looks bad and I'm not happy with my ass. And this is a really big thing about self-perception. So you can have some brain demons and you can, look in a funhouse mirror all the time and just kind of say, oh, I'm really big at the bottom. How many times, I suppose you haven't done it, but you can walk through a funhouse and you can see those mirrors where you're like really skinny up top and really big at the bottom. But we laugh at that and we're like, oh yeah, that's funny. That's funny. But sometimes you can actually see yourself with that. It's like anorexics. They look in the mirror, they see a fat person. They're not fat. It's their body image. It's their self-perception. And a lot of mental coaching has to go into this. If you do have a differential in terms of, you're a pear shape, for example, as opposed to a straight up and down shape or an hourglass or something like that, it could be genetics. My genetics, all of the women in my family, that my mum's French, and all of the women in my family, I've got big legs, big thighs. I used to fucking hate my thighs because I was just like, oh, they're so big, I don't want big thighs. Now I love them because you know what? If you're on a phone on the toilet or something like that and you drop it, big thighs save your phone. It's good,
I guess.
It's a good thing. But now self-perception is very, very different. Don't get me wrong, I can still look in the mirror and I can still kind of think, oh my God, I'm so fat. But everybody is going to have that. Even Olympians do that. So you can see people on the Olympia stage. I've got a lovely friend, Ria, who's just competed in the figure category, and she's in her reverse and obviously gaining some body fat and that kind of thing now. And on her check-in pictures, she decided to actually send somebody or send her coach a picture of Jabba the Hutt, because that's how she felt, and it wasn't her. But so even these amazing people who get in amazing shape on stage still have those qualms because they're not robots. They're not aliens. Everybody's going to feel like that. So Joe, what I would actually say to you, because I know we're coming up on time now. Jesus, we've been talking for a long time. Well, Joe, what I would say to you is really kind of have a good in-depth look into things that you are doing and how you are self-perceiving. Because perception is skewed. Perception can be an absolute bitch. I'm very happy to look at her pictures and give my opinion or what have you like that, because I'm no bullshit. You know that anyway. I just tell it how it is. But yeah, have a look at your self-perception and accept the fact that if genetically you are a little bit heavier down the bottom, you can still do something about it, but don't think about spot reducing, because spot reduction is not a thing, unfortunately.
No, that's it.
Do you want to finish off with anything else? Have you got any other questions for me that you want to ask me?
We'll do one quick one, which would be just given sort of like your level of professionalism, what how would you feel about, so I'm your new client and I say to you, Vicky, I'm really interested in doing this thing where I have one shake a day and a sugar tablet, and maybe I drink aloe vera gel or something like that, and I'm going to lose, I don't know, 2 stone in 9 days. Is that going to be really good for me?
I'd call you a dick. I just said I'm no bullshit. I would literally call you a dick. So you'd have a shake a day. I'm assuming this shake is going to be a full panel of all of your nutrients, vitamins, and blah, 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 and all the rest of it all day.
Heavily marketed, branded to sort of like be a meal replacement that, is special in some way. It absolutely isn't just a protein shake that you could buy from anywhere else. It's special.
Just magic.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that sort of stuff in terms of how healthy it is?
So my sister-in-law did this, and it's called the Zanti diet. And I don't know if you've known about, or you can see it about whatever like that. And she's like, but yeah, so she did the Zanti diet. It's a shake a day. She didn't take a sugar pill because that's like weird. But yeah, it's the Zanti diet, 1 shake a day and going out for a walk. And then I think that was about it. No, it wasn't 1 shake a day. It was 3 shakes a day, but it was literally a shake diet, right? So yeah, you're going to lose probably 9 kilos in 9 days because a lot of it's going to be water and you're only going to be taking in about 700 calories a day. Is that going to be healthy for you? Not particularly. Are you going to put on all the weight again that you see on the scale loss on day 10, 11, and 12? Yeah. Are you going to feel like shit? Possibly. Are you going to be able to eat a dinner with your family? Hell no. Are you ever going to do it probably again for a quick fix? Yes. Reason why? Because you saw a quick fix on the scale.
Yeah.
But this is what's known as yo-yo dieting. And unfortunately, my sister-in-law is a predominant yo-yo dieter. She'll go from a really high weight down to a low weight really quick because it's easy. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I can get rid of the fat dead quick and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. But then on like, 2 weeks later or whatever, she's back up again. And the problem is with yo-yo dieting. Sorry, I could talk really, really quick on this kind of thing. The problem is with yo-yo dieting is that you have what's known as a fat overshoot because your body is starved. And all of a sudden, your body's like, do you know what? I need to lay down a hell of a lot of reserves now in case I'm going to starve again, because I have been doing it in the past. So you lay down more body fat than you did previously because you've gone from 700 calories a day up to 1,400 calories a day. And even though you are classing that as a reverse, you are still doubling your calories. And your double calories are going to come from predominantly carbohydrate and fat source. Because why? Women don't like eating protein. I don't know why. I love protein, but I have a lot of women who just kind of say, oh, I'm really struggling to get protein in. If you struggle with protein, just eat a little bit more of that protein.
Yeah.
If you have chicken for dinner, instead of having 100 grams of chicken, have 150. Simples. If you have 100 grams of yogurt, have 150. All of those little bits throughout the day are going to mount up. But yeah, if you're just going to come to me and say, right, Vic, I'm not going to listen to anything that you say because I'm going to have one shake a day, I'm going to have a sugar pill, and then I'm going to take aloe vera. I'm going to say, okay, fine, do that. And then come to me when you're shitting your brains out because of the aloe vera. You're having stomach cramps because of the aloe vera as well. You're going to be having hypos because of the sugar pill that isn't actually going to be working. And you're going to be hangry as fuck because all you've had all day is a shake. And then I'll give you some macronutrients in order to abide by.
Yeah. So I think we agree that these quick fixes are often very temporary fixes, and often there's interest to be paid on this in terms of like you've lost a load of fat, but you're most likely going to gain it back, and maybe with interest. So although it doesn't sound sexy and doesn't sound easy, doing things slowly, habit-based, is probably going to be the best recipe for success long term. Things that you can actually do and assimilate for the rest of your life, if that makes sense. I'm really, really happy if a client comes to me and literally I've taught them what they need to do to be able to not need me in terms of either exercise or whether it's exercise, nutrition, whatever it is. Whereas a quick fix, have this thing for 9 days or 30-day shred or whatever the thing is that you're doing, it's what happens after those, that sort of thing's over. It's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You just got, if you want to be able to lose weight and keep it off, it has to be sustainable. And that's it. There is no magic diet. If followed and if adhered to, any diet will work. But the caveat to that is those 2 words at the beginning, if followed. If you follow it, it will work. I've had clients who have come to me and saying, I'm really disappointed that I haven't lost any weight this week. Okay, tell me about this week. Well, I haven't stuck to it and I haven't done my training and I haven't actually done this. And the other night I was really upset because so this, that, and the other. So I had a pizza and then I had half a tub of Ben & Jerry's. But I'm really upset that I haven't lost weight. What do you want to do about that, my darling? If you haven't adhered to it and you haven't followed it, it will not work. Now, there is a hell of a lot of differences between following a diet and making it work for you within your lifestyle as well. And if you are an emotional eater, so like I just said there, a client said she was upset. So because she was upset, she had a pizza and she had some ice cream or whatever like that. If you're an emotional eater, you need to figure out how to deal with those emotions in a different way than solving them with food. Yeah. Because if you approach food, realistically, that's not actually going to make you feel any better, because it might make you feel better for that split second. But then after that, you're like, oh, I feel really horrible because I've just done that. So there's a lot more to it. And that's a whole other podcast, which we could possibly get into on another occasion. But for now, pick something that is going to fit into your lifestyle, that you can adhere to, and that you can follow. And that is basically it. Don't get het up on meal timing. Don't get het up on hormones. Don't get het up on the big sparkly brand new, this new diet is shiny and it will make you lose all of your cellulite within the first 4 weeks. It doesn't happen. No. It's not sexy. It's not interesting. It's not new. Anything that kind of says new diet system, run away and just stick to your calorie deficit. And that is it. And if you want chips, eat chips.
That's it. Yep. So it's nothing new or sexy, but it is something that I think people need to keep hearing. I think no matter what we say, people will always like the idea of these diets because they are very, very attractive, very well marketed and all that sort of stuff.
And they have a celebrity that endorses them.
Yeah, usually. So whether it's, well, I guess we won't name brands, but there are lots of them that you can do and try. But invariably, you're going to, at some point, if you want to be healthy, strong, fit, and live long, you're going to need to maybe adjust your nutrition rather than just doing a short-term diet.
Exactly.
If you agree.
I do. I certainly do. Yeah. Right, that is it then, guys. I'm sorry that we batted on for an hour and 20 minutes.
At least.
Oh dear Lord. Right. So if you've got any questions, shoot them over, DM, message, comment on the YouTube, whatever like that. And we might have another catch up if people like it.
Sounds good.
All right, my man. See you later.
All right. See you soon.